Laurel Harrington, 32. Never thought her entrepreneurial dreams would lead to her greatest personal triumph or the most painful family betrayal she'd ever experience. That fateful Thanksgiving dinner should have been a celebration, but instead became the moment everything changed. When my sister's mockery echoed across the dining table and everyone, even my parents, joined in the laughter, something broke inside me. I made a silent vow that day that would forever alter our family's future and reveal the truth behind our perfect facade. Before I dive into my story, I'd love to hear where you're all watching from. Drop your location in the comments, and if this family drama resonates with you at all, please hit that like button and subscribe to join our storytelling. Community. Trust me, if you've ever dealt with family members who underestimate you, you'll want to stick around to see how this revenge plays out. Now, let's get into how it all began. Growing up in the picturesque suburb of Oak Ridge, Connecticut, my family appeared perfect from the outside. My father, Richard Harrington, was a successful investment banker whose financial advice was sought after by everyone in our social circle. My mother, Eleanor, maintained the image of the ideal homemaker while secretly running most of the family's investment decisions behind the scenes. Then there was my older sister, Vanessa, the golden child Harvard Law graduate and partner at a prestigious firm by 30. And me, I was Laurel, the creative one, which in my family was code for least likely to succeed. While I graduated with honors from NYU with a business degree, my unconventional ideas about sustainable entrepreneurship were dismissed as phases or hobbies by my achievement-oriented family. "When are you going to get a real job?" became the chorus at every family gathering. My parents had mapped out a trajectory similar to Vanessa's prestigious firm partner track country club membership, but I wanted something different. I wanted to build something meaningful from the ground up. After college, while Vanessa was climbing the corporate ladder, I was working 3 jobs to save money for my business idea, an eco-friendly clothing line made from sustainable materials with a zero-waste production model. I'd spend nights researching suppliers, creating business plans, and developing prototypes. But whenever I shared my progress at family dinners, I'd be met with thinly veiled skepticism. "That's nice, dear," my mother would say, before immediately turning to Vanessa to ask about her latest high-profile case. My father was more direct. "The fashion industry is brutal, Laurel. Most startups fail within the first year. Why not use your degree to get a stable position at one of my friend's firms?" Vanessa was the worst of all. She had this way of smiling, not with warmth, but with superiority, before delivering perfectly crafted backhanded compliments. "It's so adorable that you're so passionate about your little projects, Laure." I wish I had time for hobbies. What my family didn't know, or rather chose not to see, was that I wasn't just playing around. I had been methodically building the foundations of Verdant Threads, my sustainable clothing company. I'd secured meetings with ethical fabric suppliers in Portugal and India. I'd connected with a small manufacturing facility in North Carolina that specialized in zero-waste production. I'd even attracted interest from 3 angel investors who believed in my vision. But none of that mattered in the Harrington household, where success was measured by corner offices and partnership announcements. The family dynamics were complex beneath our picture-perfect exterior. My parents had built their relationship on shared ambition and social climbing. My father came from old money that had nearly run out by the time he inherited it, and my mother from new money, eager to establish deeper roots in high society. Their marriage was as much a merger as it was a love match. Vanessa had internalized their values completely. Viewing life as a competition, she was determined to win at any cost. From childhood, she'd position herself as the superior sibling, taking my toys, claiming credit for my achievements, and ensuring our parents viewed her as the more promising investment. When we were teenagers, Vanessa accidentally spilled punch on my science fair project the night before judging, ensuring her project won first place. When we both applied to colleges, she told me Yale had rejected me before the letters arrived. I'd actually been accepted but chose NYU for its business program. These weren't childish pranks, but calculated moves to maintain her position at the top of our family hierarchy. As adults, the pattern continued. When I brought my first serious boyfriend to a family dinner, Vanessa spent the evening subtly flirting with him, not because she was interested, but because she couldn't stand the idea that I might be happy in an area where she was. Currently struggling, her own relationship had recently ended. 3 months later, he and I broke up. Despite all this, a part of me still craved my family's approval. I kept trying to prove myself, holding on to the childish hope that eventually they would see my worth. I showed up to every family event, shared my business milestones despite the dismissive responses, and even helped Vanessa move into her new luxury condo when none of her high-powered friends could be bothered. The truth was beneath my determined exterior. Their constant undermining had taken its toll. There were nights I'd lie awake, questioning my choices and abilities. The voice in my head often sounded suspiciously like Vanessa's. "Who do you think you are? You're not cut out for this. You'll never be successful." But there was something else they didn't know about me. While Vanessa had inherited our parents' ambition and social grace, I had inherited my grandmother's resilience. My mother's mother had built a successful catering business from nothing after being widowed at a young age at a time when female entrepreneurs were rare. Before she passed away when I was 16, she'd told me, "The world will try to tell you who you are, Laurel. Don't you listen. You decide." Those words became my mantra on the hardest days. And by the fall of 2023, despite my family's lack of faith, Verdant Threads was finally gaining traction. I'd secured a small business loan to complement my investor funding, finalized agreements with my suppliers, and was preparing for a soft launch in the spring. A popular sustainability influencer had agreed to feature my first collection, and a boutique in Soho had expressed interest in carrying my line. For the first time, I felt like I was on the verge of proving them all wrong. I just needed a little more time and a bit more funding to make the launch everything I'd envisioned. In a moment of optimism, I decided to apply for the Forrester Grant, a prestigious $250,000 award given annually to innovative startups with potential for significant social impact. The application process was grueling, requiring detailed business plans, environmental impact assessments, and production models. I worked on it for weeks, often staying up until dawn to perfect every detail. The odds were slim. Thousands of entrepreneurs applied each year, but just completing the application felt like an accomplishment. With Thanksgiving approaching, I allowed myself to hope that maybe this year would be different. Maybe this year, my family would finally see that I wasn't just playing entrepreneur. Little did I know that the Thanksgiving dinner would become a turning point, but not in the way I had hoped. Thanksgiving at the Harrington household was always a carefully orchestrated affair. My mother spent weeks planning the menu, selecting the finest wines, and ensuring the table setting was magazine-worthy. This year was no exception, with the added prestige of hosting my father's new managing partner and his wife connections that could further elevate the family's social standing. I arrived early to help with preparations, despite knowing my assistants would be micromanaged and critiqued. My mother had already dismissed my offer to bring a sustainable, locally sourced side dish. That's sweet honey, but I've got the menu perfectly balanced, so I came with an expensive bottle of wine, instead a peace offering of pink sorts. "Oh, you're here," my mother said, when I walked in, her tone suggesting I was both late and early simultaneously. She was arranging flower centerpieces, her movements precise and controlled. Vanessa just called, "She's bringing Martin." Martin was Vanessa's new boyfriend, a senior partner at her firm, who was 15 years her senior, and according to my parents, extremely well connected. This would be my first time meeting him, though I'd heard his name mentioned reverently at least a dozen times. "That's nice," I replied, rolling up my sleeves. "Where do you need me?" For the next 2 hours, I chopped vegetables, polished silverware, and listened to my mother alternate between praising Vanessa's recent courtroom victory and subtly inquiring about my love life business prospects, and whether I'd considered that marketing position Richard mentioned at Goldman. By the time guests began arriving, I was already emotionally drained, but I plastered on the Harrington, smile, wide, confident, and entirely for show. Vanessa made her entrance last, of course, with Martin in tow tall, distinguished with the self-assured air of someone who'd never questioned his place in the world. "Everyone, this is Martin Schaefer," Vanessa announced as though introducing visiting royalty. My parents fawned appropriately, while my father's colleagues nodded with recognition and respect. Dinner began smoothly enough. The conversation flowed around business deals, legal strategies, and the right private schools for children, the standard Harrington dinner topics. I contributed where I could and sipped my wine when I couldn't, practicing the fine art of existing in my family without disappearing entirely. Then, my father, warmed by success and expensive bourbon, turned to Martin with a conspiratorial smile. "So, Martin, Vanessa tells us, you're on the selection committee for the Forrester Grant this year. Must be interesting seeing all those ambitious young entrepreneurs." My heart stopped. The Forrester Grant, my application, and Vanessa's boyfriend was on the selection committee. I hadn't told my family I'd applied, knowing they'd either discourage me or worse, mock my chances. But now, with my application under review by someone sitting at our table, I felt exposed and vulnerable. Martin nodded, swirling his wine. "Yes, interesting is one way to put it. Some brilliant innovations, mixed with a lot of, let's say, unrealistic dreams." He chuckled, and everyone joined in appreciatively. Everyone except me. I should have stayed quiet, should have let the moment pass. But something, perhaps my grandmother's resilience, or simply years of suppressed frustration, made me speak. "I actually applied for the Forrester Grant," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "For verdant threads." The table fell silent. My mother's fork paused midway to her mouth. My father's expression flickered between surprise and preemptive disappointment. But it was Vanessa's face that told the real story shock, followed by something darker, more calculating. "You applied for the Forrester?" she asked, her tone making it clear how absurd she found the notion. "For your clothing hobby?" "It's not a hobby," I corrected, feeling heat rise in my cheeks. "It's a business. A sustainable fashion company with innovative production methods that could significantly reduce industry waste." Martin looked at me with new interest. "Harrington, I don't recall seeing your application yet." "It would be under Laurel Carson," I explained, using my middle name as my professional surname to avoid trading on the Harrington name. "Submitted 3 weeks ago." Recognition dawned in his eyes, but before he could respond, Vanessa laughed that perfect practice laugh she used when asserting dominance. "Oh my God, Lar," she said, turning to the table with theatrical amusement. "She's been playing entrepreneur since we were kids. Remember her lemonade stand that went bankrupt because she gave free drinks to every sad story that walked by?" My parents chuckled indulgently, the tension broken by this familiar narrative of Laurel the dreamer, Laurel the impractical. "And that candle business in high school," my mother added, warming to the theme. "What happened there, honey?" "The supplier increased their prices," I said, quietly remembering the small business I'd built at 17 that had actually turned a profit until external factors intervened. "But Verdant Threads is different. I've spent years developing the business model. Playing entrepreneur again," Vanessa said, her voice sharp despite her smile. She turned to Martin. "My sister has a new business idea every year. None of them ever quite materialize." Everyone at the table laughed, my parents, my father's colleagues, even Martin, who now looked at me with the dismissive pity I knew too well. The sound surrounded me, suffocating me with its familiar cruelty. In that moment, something crystallized within me. This wasn't just about a missed opportunity or wounded pride. This was about a pattern, a family dynamic that had been destroying my self-confidence for years. And now, Vanessa had potentially sabotaged my greatest professional opportunity before it had even been fairly considered. As the laughter faded and conversation moved on, I excused myself to the restroom. Locking the door behind me, I gripped the marble countertop and stared at my reflection. The woman looking back at me wasn't the insecure younger sister or the family disappointment. She was angry. She was determined. And she was done trying to earn approval from people who would never give it. When I returned to the table, I was quieter, observing rather than participating. I watched Vanessa holding court, my parents beaming with pride, Martin nodding approvingly at whatever she said. But I also noticed something else. The slight possessive way Martin touched Vanessa's arm, the practiced charm that seemed to switch on and off depending on who was watching, and most interestingly, the way he checked his phone under the table with a furtive glance that suggested the messages weren't work-related. As dessert was served, I made a decision. I would no longer seek the approval of people who took pleasure in diminishing me. Instead, I would channel my energy into proving them wrong, not for their validation, but for my own vindication. And if Vanessa had indeed tried to sabotage my grant application, I would find out. The perfect Harrington family facade was about to crack, and I wouldn't be the only one exposed. The days following Thanksgiving unfolded in a fog of determination and simmering anger. I threw myself into finalizing my business launch plans, channeling my emotions into productive action rather than self-pity. But in quiet moments, the memory of that dinner, the laughter, Vanessa's smug smile, Martin's dismissive glance would return, reigniting my resolve to not only succeed, but to expose the truth behind my family's perfect image. A week after Thanksgiving, I received an email that should have been the highlight of my entrepreneurial journey. Verdant Threads had made it to the semi-finalist round for the Forrester grant. Under normal circumstances, I would have immediately called my family to share the news, still seeking that elusive approval despite years of disappointment. But now I kept the information to myself, a quiet victory in a battle they didn't know we were fighting. The semi-finalist email included an invitation to a networking event for the remaining 50 candidates, where we would meet the selection committee informally before the next round of evaluations. Martin would be there, and so would I, but not as the meek Laurel Harrington they expected. The evening of the event, I dressed with purpose, a vintage Armani suit I'd found at a consignment shop tailored to perfection, paired with my prototype Verdant Thread silk blouse made from regenerated fabric. Professional, polished, but with a sustainable twist that represented everything my company stood for. I wasn't just attending as a hopeful recipient, I was showcasing my brand. The event was held at the Forrester Foundation headquarters, a renovated industrial space that balanced luxury with environmental consciousness, reclaimed wood, living walls, and energy-efficient design elements. As I entered, confidence radiating in a way my family had never witnessed, I spotted Martin across the room, holding court with several nervous-looking applicants. I didn't approach him immediately. Instead, I networked strategically, connecting with other committee members, exchanging ideas with fellow entrepreneurs, establishing myself as a serious contender. When I finally made my way to Martin, his expression flickered with recognition and surprise. "Miss Carson," he said, recovering quickly, "I didn't expect to see you here." "Semi-finalist," I replied, with a smile that revealed nothing of my inner thoughts. "Your committee must have seen something promising in my application." He nodded, a calculated assessment in his eyes. "Yes, the preliminary reviewers were quite impressed with your zero-waste production model, though there are concerns about scalability, which I address in Phase 3 of my implementation plan," I countered smoothly. Page 37 of my business proposal. A hint of genuine respect crossed his features. "You're more prepared than I expected." I'm more everything than people expect, Mr. Schaefer. Our conversation continued professionally, but underneath ran an electric current of unspoken tension. He knew I was Vanessa's sister. I knew he was potentially in a position to derail my dreams. What he didn't know was that I was watching him carefully, noting the way his eyes lingered too long on the event coordinator, the subtle check of his phone when he thought no one was looking. As the evening progressed, I excused myself to use the restroom. Passing by the coat check area, I noticed Martin's expensive overcoat draped over a chair, his phone peeking from the pocket as it charged from a portable battery. The phone lit up with a notification, and without thinking, I glanced at the screen. A text message preview from someone named C read, "Missing you? Can't wait until V's business trip next." The rest was cut off, but it was enough to confirm my suspicions. Martin was cheating on Vanessa. My first reaction was surprisingly complicated, a flash of protective anger for my sister, followed by a darker thought this could be useful. I didn't touch the phone. I didn't need to. Instead, I filed away this information and returned to the networking event with renewed focus. By the end of the night, I had made valuable connections with 3 committee members, received business cards from 2 potential investors, interested in sustainable fashion, and planted seeds of doubt in Martin's mind about his initial dismissal of my business. But the real work began the following day. I created a detailed spreadsheet tracking the Forrester Grant application process, committee members' backgrounds, and decision timelines. I researched previous winners, identifying patterns in the types of businesses and presentations that succeeded. And most importantly, I began a careful investigation into Martin Schaefer. It wasn't difficult to find information once I knew where to look. LinkedIn revealed his career trajectory impressive, but with some suspiciously quick advancements. Instagram showed carefully curated professional posts, but with telling likes on certain models and actresses' photos. And a deep dive into legal databases uncovered a sealed settlement from 5 years ago with a former associate at his previous firm. I wasn't just gathering ammunition against Martin. I was building a comprehensive understanding of the man who might stand between me and my dreams. Knowledge was power, and for once I wanted to be the Harrington holding the cards. Meanwhile, I continued developing verdant threads, refusing to let my family drama distract from my primary goal. I finalized agreements with my suppliers, completed the production samples for my first collection, and updated my business plan with even more detailed sustainability metrics. If I was going to win the Forrester Grant, it would be on the strength of my business, not through manipulation, though I wasn't above using what I knew to ensure a fair evaluation. 3 weeks after the networking event, I received another email I had advanced to the finalist round. 10 candidates remained, and we would each present our business plans to the full selection committee in person. The final hurdle before the announcement of the winner. That same evening, Vanessa called. We hadn't spoken since Thanksgiving, which wasn't unusual. Our relationship had always been more obligatory than close. Her voice had that controlled excitement that meant she was about to share news she expected to be praised for. "Mom and Dad wanted me to call you," she began the implicit message, clear she wouldn't have called otherwise. "Martin and I are hosting an engagement dinner next Saturday. Black tie at Le Cirque. We'd like you to be there." Engaged. Vanessa and Martin were getting engaged even while he was texting mysterious C about missing them. The perfect Harrington daughter and her prestigious partner cementing the family legacy while hiding sordid secrets. Congratulations, I managed my mind racing. That's wonderful news. Yes, well, it makes sense for us. Vanessa continued professional even in personal matters. Our 5-year plans align perfectly, and Mother is thrilled about the summer wedding possibilities at the club. As she continued discussing venue options and guest list considerations, I made another decision. I would attend the engagement dinner, I would smile and toast and play the supportive sister. and I would watch and wait, gathering the final pieces I needed for what was becoming not just a business strategy, but a plan for long overdue family reckoning. Oh, and Laurel Vanessa added, just before ending the call, wear something appropriate. Martin's managing partner will be there, and first impressions matter. After we hung up, I sat in my apartment, surrounded by sustainable fabric samples and business projections, and laughed a real laugh, not the polite Harrington version. The irony was delicious. Vanessa, so concerned about appearances, had no idea what was coming. I opened my laptop and typed a new document title, Operation Truth. It was time to prepare for both my Forrester presentation and my sister's engagement dinner. Two performances that would change everything. Hey everyone, we're about to hit the most intense part of my story. I can feel your anticipation through the screen right now. If you're enjoying this family drama so far, please hit that like button to let me know. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time. You won't want to miss what happens next in this sister showdown. Now, let me tell you what happened when I put my plan into action. The night of Vanessa and Martin's engagement dinner arrived with perfect dramatic timing, exactly 1 week before my final Forrester grant presentation. I'd spent the intervening days polishing both my business pitch and my strategy for the evening ahead, uncertain which would prove more challenging. I chose my outfit carefully, a classically cut emerald dress made from reclaimed silk, one of my verdant threads prototypes, paired with vintage jewelry that had belonged to my grandmother. Professional, elegant, but with subtle details that spoke to my values and vision. I wasn't just dressing for the occasion, I was armoring myself for battle. Le Cirque was predictably opulent, with soft lighting that flattered the already beautiful and crystal glasses that tinkled musically with each toast. Our parents had arrived early to approve the arrangements, my father already deep in conversation with Martin's managing partner when I walked in. My mother air-kissed my cheeks, her eyes performing a quick evaluation of my appearance before nodding with minimal approval. Vanessa and Martin are making their entrance in 10 minutes, she informed me. Try to mingle with the Whitcombs. They have a son about your age who's doing fascinating things in finance. Classic Eleanor Harrington, always networking, always pushing her daughters towards suitable connections. I smiled and moved toward the bar, instead ordering a sparkling water with lime. I needed a clear head tonight. While waiting for my drink, I felt a presence beside me. Turning, I found myself face to face with a striking woman in her early 30s, with intelligent eyes and an expression that suggested she'd rather be anywhere else. Charity event or corporate celebration? She asked, nodding toward the gathering. Engagement dinner, I replied. My sister and her fiancé? Ah, she raised her champagne slightly. Congratulations to the happy couple then. Something in her tone caught my attention, a subtle edge that didn't match her polite words. You know them, I know of them, she amended carefully. Martin Schaefer has quite the reputation in certain circles. My interest sharpened instantly. I'm Laurel, I offered, deliberately omitting my last name. Charlotte, she responded, extending her hand. Charlotte Weber. Charlotte, see. The mysterious texter. It seemed too convenient, too perfect a coincidence. But before I could probe further, a hush fell over the room as Vanessa and Martin made their entrance, the picture-perfect couple framed by the restaurant's grand doorway. Vanessa was radiant in a designer gown that probably cost more than my first production run. Her hand possessively entwined with Martin's as they accepted congratulations and well wishes. They moved through the crowd with practiced grace the power couple embodied. When they reached me, Vanessa's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Laurel, you made it, and you look nice. Congratulations to you both, I said, kissing her cheek and shaking Martin's hand. His eyes flickered with recognition, and the slightest hint of wariness he remembered our conversation at the Forrester event. Miss Harrington, he acknowledged. Your sister tells me you're still pursuing that clothing line. Verdant Threads, I corrected smoothly. Yes, in fact, I'm a finalist for the Forrester Grant. But you'd know that, wouldn't you, being on the committee? A flash of discomfort crossed his features, quickly masked. Yes, of course. The committee has been impressed with several of the finalists, including Laurel. Vanessa interjected her tone, suggesting the idea was ludicrous. Martin hesitated just long enough to be telling. The deliberations are confidential until after the final presentations. Vanessa laughed, that same dismissive sound from Thanksgiving. Well, don't feel you have to favor her application just because we're family now. Merit should decide these things. I absolutely agree, I said, meeting her gaze steadily. Merit and truth are all that should matter in business and in life. Something in my tone must have alerted her, because her eyes narrowed slightly. But before she could respond, they were called away to greet more arriving guests, leaving me alone again, but not for long. Charlotte reappeared at my side, her expression thoughtful. Harrington, she mused. You're Vanessa Harrington's sister. That explains a few things. Does it? I kept my voice neutral, though. My heart was racing. She studied me for a moment, then made a decision. I think we should talk. Not here. We found a quiet corner near the restrooms, away from prying eyes and eager ears. Charlotte's posture changed once we were alone, the social mask falling away to reveal determination and a hint of anger. I'm not sure what you know or suspect, she began, but I feel I should warn you about Martin Schaefer. Are you the C who texts him? I asked directly. Surprise flickered across her face, followed by a grim smile. No, that would be Cynthia, his other girlfriend. I'm his former associate, who received a settlement after he took credit for my casework and then suggested my silence could be bought. The pieces were falling into place faster than I'd anticipated. The sealed settlement from 5 years ago. She nodded, impressed. You've done your homework. Yes, I signed an NDA as part of that settlement, which is why I'm being careful about what I say. But seeing him here celebrated and rewarded with a beautiful fiancé and partner track. She shook her head. It doesn't sit right. Why are you here tonight? I asked, genuinely curious. Martin doesn't know I was invited. I'm here as a +1 with Judge Weber, my father. He and Martin's managing partner go way back. Her smile turned slightly predatory. Small world, isn't it? Before we could continue, my mother's voice called out my name, summoning me for family photos. Charlotte pressed a business card into my hand. Call me, there's more you should know. The rest of the dinner proceeded like a play, where I alone could see the strings and scaffolding behind the perfect production. Toasts were made, celebrating Vanessa and Martin's integrity and bright future. My father spoke about values and the Harrington legacy of excellence. Vanessa thanked everyone for supporting their partnership built on mutual respect and ambition. Throughout it all, I watched Martin's wandering eyes when he thought no one was looking, Vanessa's calculated charm as she worked the room, Charlotte's careful documentation of the evening from her corner table, my parents' proud ignorance of the rot beneath the perfect surface they'd cultivated. When it came time for the siblings' toast, all eyes turned to me expectantly. I rose champagne in hand and smiled at my sister and her fiancé. To Vanessa and Martin, I began my voice steady. May your future together be exactly what you deserve. I caught Vanessa's slight frown. She'd expected more, perhaps some fawning words about her accomplishments or an acknowledgement of how I'd always looked up to her. Instead, I'd offered truth wrapped in conventional pleasantries, the perfect Harrington way. As the dinner wound down, I made my excuses and prepared to leave. In the coat check area, I felt a hand on my arm, Martin, his expression carefully calibrated between concern and authority. Laurel, a word. He guided me to a quiet alcove. I hope there are no misunderstandings about the grant selection process. The committee evaluates each application strictly on merit. Of course, I replied smoothly. And my business will stand or fall on its own merits, just as your relationship with my sister should stand or fall on truth." His face hardened. "I'm not sure I understand your meaning." "I think you do. Congratulations again on your engagement, Martin. I look forward to seeing you at my presentation next week." As I walked out into the cool night air, I felt lighter than I had in years. The confrontation wasn't the explosive family drama some might have expected, but it had accomplished exactly what I needed, planting seeds of doubt, gathering crucial information, and positioning the pieces for what would come next. I pulled out my phone and sent a text to the number on Charlotte's card. "I'd like to know more." "Coffee tomorrow," her reply came quickly, 11 a.m. The Milan Park. Bring your Forrester presentation. I have suggestions. I smiled as I slipped into a taxi. The engagement dinner had been just the opening move. The real game was about to begin. Before I tell you what happened next, I want to thank all of you who've stuck with me through this story so far. Your support means everything as I share this difficult chapter of my life. If you're finding any value in my experience, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel. I share stories like this one every week, and trust me, what happens next with Charlotte and my final confrontation with my family is something you won't want to miss. Now, let's continue with what happened after that fateful engagement dinner. The Milan Park was a far cry from Le Cirque's opulence, an industrial chic coffee shop frequented by creative professionals and entrepreneurs, with reclaimed wood tables and local art on the walls. It was my kind of place, and apparently Charlotte's too. She was already there when I arrived, her corporate armor exchanged for casual elegance jeans, a crisp white button-down hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. 2 laptops sat open on the table before her along with a stack of file folders. "You came prepared," I observed, sliding into the seat across from her. "Always." She pushed a coffee toward me. "Oat milk latte. I guessed you'd be the sustainable type." I smiled, taking the cup. "Good guess. So what exactly are we doing here, Charlotte?" Comparing notes, she replied, "All business now, and potentially forming an alliance that could benefit us both." Over the next hour, Charlotte Weber revealed herself to be not just a former associate with a grudge, but a brilliant legal mind with a methodical approach to justice. After her settlement with Martin, she'd left corporate law to start her own practice, specializing in workplace ethics and harassment cases. She'd been tracking Martin's career trajectory, documenting patterns of behavior, and quietly building a case that could eventually be used if the right circumstances aligned. "The NDA prevents me from discussing specific details of my own case," she explained, "but it doesn't prevent me from investigating new incidents or representing other parties." Like Cynthia, I asked, remembering the mysterious texter. Charlotte's expression revealed nothing. I can neither confirm nor deny who my clients might be, but I can say that patterns of behavior tend to repeat, and Martin Schaefer has a distinct pattern. She turned one of her laptops toward me, showing a timeline of Martin's career with certain dates highlighted in red. "Professional advancement," she explained, pointing to the timeline. Then she switched to another document, a list of names, all women with dates beside them. "Personal entanglements." Notice any correlation? The pattern was clear. Martin's career jumps often coincided with new relationships with women who had connections or influence in his desired sphere. And those relationships tended to end shortly after he secured his new positions. "He's a climber," I mused, "using women as rungs on his ladder." "Precisely. And your sister is the perfect next step," I finished. "Daughter of Richard Harrington, with connections throughout the financial world." Charlotte nodded. "But there's more." She hesitated, then continued carefully. "I have reason to believe Martin may be using his position on the Forrester Committee for personal gain." My attention sharpened. "Explain." 3 previous grant recipients have links to companies where Martin later received lucrative consulting contracts. Nothing explicit enough to trigger ethics violations, but the pattern suggests quid pro quo arrangements. And you think he might be planning something similar with my application, leveraging his influence to affect the outcome in exchange for future benefits? It's possible, especially if he views you as a potential threat to his relationship with Vanessa. Have you given him any reason to see you that way? I thought about our interactions, my pointed comments at the engagement dinner, the hint that I knew about his infidelity. He might suspect I know more than I'm letting on. Charlotte's expression turned grim. Then your application could be in jeopardy regardless of its merits. I felt a familiar wave of frustration once again. Factors beyond my control and unrelated to my work could determine my success. But this time I had something I'd never had before, an ally who understood the game and knew how to play it. "Show me your presentation," Charlotte said, switching gears. "Let's make sure it's bulletproof." For the next 3 hours, we dissected my Forrester pitch, strengthening the financial projections, clarifying the implementation timeline, and enhancing the social impact metrics. Charlotte's legal background provided invaluable insights into the contractual aspects of my supplier relationships, while her experience with the corporate world helped me anticipate and address potential objections. By the time we finished, my presentation was transformed not in substance, as the core business remained unchanged, but in presentation with every aspect polished to withstand the most rigorous scrutiny. "This is excellent work," Charlotte said, reviewing the final version, "but there's still the Martin factor to consider." "What do you suggest?" She closed her laptop, considering. "2 approaches. First, we ensure your presentation is so outstanding that even Martin can't justify voting against it without raising suspicions from other committee members. And second, a slight smile curved her lips. Insurance, in case merit alone isn't enough. Charlotte outlined her plan not to blackmail or threaten, but to create a situation where transparency was the only viable option. We would document everything: Martin's potential conflicts of interest, the pattern of grant recipients, and subsequent contracts, my own interactions with him at the networking event and engagement dinner. The key, she explained, is to approach this not as personal revenge, but as ethical oversight. The Forrester Foundation prides itself on transparency and fairness. If there's even a hint that one of their committee members might be compromising that integrity, they'd want to know, I finished understanding dawning. This isn't just about my grant application or Vanessa's relationship, it's about systemic accountability. Charlotte nodded approval in her eyes. Exactly. And that's where our interests align perfectly. I want Martin held accountable for his pattern of behavior. You want a fair evaluation of your business, and I suspect some form of recognition from your family. The way she articulated my deep-seated desire, not for revenge, but for simple acknowledgement, struck a chord. You understand family dynamics too, I see. A shadow crossed her face. Let's just say I recognize the signs of someone who's been invisible in their own home. We spent the remainder of our meeting developing a detailed strategy for the week ahead. Charlotte would compile the documentation on Martin's past grant decisions and subsequent consulting arrangements. I would focus on perfecting my presentation while maintaining a careful watch on Martin and Vanessa's interactions. One last thing, Charlotte said as we prepared to leave. What about your sister? If this goes as planned, Martin's true character will be exposed. That will hurt her professionally and personally. I paused, confronting the complexity of my feelings toward Vanessa. Despite years of competition and undermining, she was still my sister. Did I want to see her publicly humiliated? No. But did I want her to continue building her life on lies and manipulation? Also no. Vanessa is a survivor, I said finally. She's always prioritized her image and career above everything else. If given the choice between standing by a compromised partner or protecting her own reputation, I know which she'd choose. Charlotte studied me, then nodded. Your call. But consider giving her a heads up before everything breaks. Not because she deserves it, but because it's the kind of thing the Laurel I'm getting to know would do. As we parted ways outside the coffee shop, Charlotte extended her hand. To unexpected alliances. I shook it firmly. And to making merit matter. Walking home, I felt a sense of purpose, unlike anything I'd experienced before. This wasn't just about winning a grant or proving my family wrong anymore. It was about standing up for something larger than myself, integrity, in a system that too often rewarded the wrong things and people. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother, family brunch tomorrow. Vanessa wants to discuss wedding party details. I smiled to myself as I responded with a simple, "I'll be there." Little did they know that the family dynamics they'd taken for granted for decades were about to fundamentally change. The invisible daughter was about to become impossible to ignore. The week leading up to my Forrester presentation passed in a blur of preparation, strategy sessions with Charlotte, and increasingly tense family interactions. At the Sunday brunch my mother had arranged, Vanessa had imperiously informed me that I would be a bridesmaid but not maid of honor. Jennifer has been my friend since law school, and frankly, she's more reliable while my parents discussed wedding logistics, as if orchestrating a corporate merger rather than a celebration of love. Throughout the meal, I'd maintained a pleasant, slightly distant demeanor that had my mother shooting me concerned glances. This wasn't the Laurel they knew, the one who tried too hard, who reacted to slights with either wounded silence or desperate attempts to prove her worth. This Laurel was calm, confident, and somehow unsettling in her self-possession. "Is everything all right, dear?" my mother had asked as I was leaving. "You seem different." "Everything's fine, Mom," I'd replied with a genuine smile. "Better than fine, actually. Things are finally falling into place." Now, standing outside the Forrester Foundation headquarters on presentation day, I took a deep breath and centered myself. My sustainable silk blouse and tailored suit felt like armor, professional, polished, and true to my brand's ethos. In my briefcase were 2 sets of materials: my presentation, documents, and what Charlotte and I had come to call the insurance policy, a sealed envelope with documentation of Martin's pattern of conflicts of interest. The plan was straightforward. I would deliver my presentation on merit alone, giving the committee, including Martin, the opportunity to evaluate verdant threads fairly. The insurance policy would only come into play if I had clear evidence of bias or manipulation in the process. It wasn't about threatening or blackmailing, it was about ensuring accountability if needed. Inside, the atmosphere was formal but energized, 10 entrepreneurs, each with potentially world-changing ideas prepared to make their final pitch for $250,000 in funding. I spotted Martin immediately seated in the center of the committee panel, his expression carefully neutral as our eyes met. The presentations began, each finalist given 20 minutes to pitch, followed by 10 minutes of questions. I was scheduled 7th, which gave me time to observe Martin's interaction with the other candidates. He was professional, incisive in his questioning, but I noticed he was particularly challenging toward a sustainable energy startup that had technology with potential military applications, competition for one of his firm's major clients. Perhaps, when my turn came, I approached the podium with steady steps and a clear mind. "Good afternoon. I'm Laurel Carson, founder of Verdant Threads, and I'm here to show you how we're reimagining the future of sustainable fashion." For the next 20 minutes, I outlined my vision, business model, and implementation plan with confidence and clarity. I presented the environmental impact assessments, the scalability projections, and the social responsibility components that made Verdant Threads not just a clothing company, but a movement toward more conscious consumption. Throughout my presentation, I maintained eye contact with each committee member, including Martin. His face revealed nothing, but I noticed his questions to the previous candidates had been pointed specific, almost challenging, while he remained conspicuously silent during my Q&A session, letting other committee members take the lead. When the formal questioning ended, the committee chair thanked me and announced a 15-minute break before the final 3 presentations. As the room dispersed, Martin approached me, his expression carefully calibrated between professional interest and personal connection. Impressive presentation. Miss Carson, or should I say Miss Harrington, you've clearly put considerable thought into your business model. Thank you, Mr. Schaefer, I replied evenly. I believe Verdant Thread speaks for itself on its own merits. He nodded, a slight tension in his jaw. Indeed. Merit is everything in these decisions. I hope you understand that my position on this committee and my personal connection to your family remain entirely separate. Of course, I said, meeting his gaze directly. I would expect nothing less than complete professionalism and ethical consideration from someone of your reputation. Something flickered in his eyes, recognition perhaps that my words carried more meaning than their surface value. Before he could respond, my phone buzzed with a text. Charlotte, check your email. Now. I excused myself and stepped into the hallway, opening my email to find a message from Charlotte with a single attachment, a screenshot of text messages between Martin and someone saved as JW at Forrester. The exchange was brief, but damning JW final rankings looking good. Your concerns about the Carson application MS, personal connection through fiancé's family. Potential conflict. Suggest ranking no higher than 5 regardless of presentation quality. JW noted. Will adjust accordingly. My stomach tightened. Here was evidence of exactly what we'd feared Martin using his influence to undermine my application before I'd even presented. I forwarded the email to the printer at the reception desk and retrieved the document, adding it to my insurance policy envelope. When the break ended and everyone returned to the presentation room, I made a decision. This wasn't just about my grant anymore. It was about integrity in a process that affected all the finalists. As the committee members took their seats, I approached the committee chair, Dr. Helena Foster, a respected academic with a reputation for ethical leadership, and requested a brief private word. Intrigued by my unusual request, she stepped into a side room with me. Dr. Foster, I apologize for this irregular approach, I began, but I've come into possession of information that I believe compromises the integrity of the selection process. I handed her the envelope containing all the documentation, Martin's pattern of grant recipients and subsequent consulting contracts, the text message exchange, and a formal letter outlining the ethical concerns this raised. I'm bringing this to you directly, rather than making any public allegations, because I believe in the Forrester Foundation's mission and want to protect its reputation, I explained. My goal isn't to secure the grant through pressure, but to ensure all applicants are evaluated fairly. Dr. Foster's expression remained impassive as she reviewed the materials, but I could see the growing concern in her eyes. Finally, she looked up at me. This is extremely serious, Miss Carson. If verified, these allegations would constitute a significant breach of our ethical guidelines. She studied me carefully. Why bring this forward now, just after your presentation? Because I wanted my work evaluated on its merits first, I answered honestly. I didn't want these concerns to color the committee's view of my business, but I also couldn't in good conscience remain silent about a potential systematic issue that affects all applicants. She nodded slowly. I appreciate your discretion and professionalism in handling this. Please return to the proceedings. I'll need to consult with our ethics officer immediately. When we rejoined the group, Dr. Foster whispered something to another committee member who left the room promptly. Martin watched this exchange with growing wariness. The final presentations proceeded, but there was a palpable tension in the room. Committee members exchanged glances, and Martin checked his phone repeatedly, a slight sheen of sweat visible on his forehead. After the last presenter finished, Dr. Foster stood and addressed the group. "Thank you all for your outstanding presentations. Due to an administrative matter that requires immediate attention, we will be adjusting our deliberation schedule. Please enjoy a catered lunch in the adjacent room while we address this issue. We expect to announce our decision by 3 p.m. As the finalists filed out, Dr. Foster made eye contact with me and gave an almost imperceptible nod. Then she turned to Martin. "Mr. Schaefer, would you join me and the ethics committee in the conference room? Please." I watched as Martin followed her, his posture rigid with contained tension. Whatever happened next would change everything, not just for my grant application, but potentially for my sister's future and my family's carefully constructed facade of perfection. During lunch, I received a text from Vanessa. "What did you do? Martin just called something about an ethics review. Call me now." Instead of calling, I texted back, "We need to talk in person. Meet me at the Milan Park at 4 p.m. This isn't something for a phone call." Her reply was immediate. "This better not be what I think it is." I didn't respond. Some conversations needed to happen face to face. At precisely 3 p.m., all finalists were called back into the presentation room. The committee members were seated at the table, with one notable absence, Martin Schaefer. Dr. Foster stood at the podium, her expression grave. "Before we announce our decision, I must inform you of an unusual development. The Foundation has uncovered evidence of a potential conflict of interest involving one of our committee members. This individual has been recused from the final voting, and we have reevaluated all applications according to our ethical guidelines to ensure complete fairness." Murmurs ran through the room as Dr. Foster continued. "Transparency is central to the Forrester Foundation's mission, and we are committed to maintaining the integrity of our selection process. That said, we have completed our deliberations." My heart pounded as she unfolded a piece of paper. "The recipient of this year's Forrester Grant for Innovation in Sustainable Enterprise is..." She paused, scanning the room. "Verdant Threads, founded by Laurel Carson." Time seemed to slow as I processed her words. I had won. Not through family connections or manipulation, but despite active attempts to undermine me. On the true merits of my business and vision, as I accepted the award and shook hands with the remaining committee members, Dr. Foster whispered, "We'll need to speak further about the documentation you provided. Our legal team will be in touch." I nodded, understanding that this victory was just the beginning of what would likely be a complicated process. But for now, I allowed myself to feel the pure satisfaction of achievement that even my family couldn't dismiss or diminish. My next task was perhaps even more challenging than winning the grant, meeting Vanessa and beginning the painful process of dismantling our family's culture of lies, competition, and false appearances. 4 months after winning the Forrester Grant, I stood in the newly renovated Verdant Threads studio space, surrounded by sustainable fabrics, efficient production equipment, and the first complete collection ready for market launch. The journey had been challenging but transformative, not just for my business, but for my family relationships as well. The confrontation with Vanessa that afternoon at the Milan Park had been painful but necessary. I'd shown her the evidence against Martin, not with gloating or vindictiveness, but with compassion for the difficult truth she needed to face. "He was using you, Vanessa," I'd explained gently, "just like he used others before you. Your connections, your family name, they were stepping stones for his ambition." Her initial reaction had been predictable denial, anger, accusations that I was jealous and trying to ruin her happiness. But as I laid out the pattern Charlotte and I had documented, including his relationship with Cynthia, the fight had gradually left her. "Why are you showing me this?" she'd finally asked, her voice small in a way I'd never heard before. You could have just let me marry him and discover the truth later. After everything I've done to you, why help me now? Because you're my sister, I'd answered simply. And because it's time our family stopped building relationships on lies and competition. The aftermath had been messy. Vanessa had broken off the engagement, leading to a scandal in our social circle. Martin had been removed from the Forrester Committee and was under investigation by his firm's ethics board. My parents had been shocked and embarrassed by the public nature of it all, their perfect family image tarnished. But from that painful breaking had come unexpected healing. Vanessa, humbled by the experience, had begun to really see me, perhaps for the first time. My parents, confronted with the consequences of their lifelong favoritism, had started the difficult work of examining their own behaviors. As for me, winning the grant had transformed Verdant Threads from a dismissed hobby to a respected business venture. The funding had allowed me to secure ethical manufacturing contracts, finalize my supply chain, and launch my first collection to positive industry reviews. Today marked another milestone. Vanessa was visiting the studio for the first time. Our relationship was still fragile, rebuilding slowly after decades of competition, but it was more honest than it had ever been. "This is impressive," she said, as she surveyed the space, genuine admiration in her voice. "You've created something real here, Laurel. Something important." "Thank you," I replied, the simple acknowledgement healing something long broken inside me. "That means a lot coming from you." We weren't a perfect family, not by any measure. There were still awkward moments, old habits that died hard, and wounds that needed time to fully heal. But we were building something new on a foundation of truth rather than appearance, and that made all the difference. Standing in my studio, surrounded by the physical manifestation of my long-dismissed dreams, I thought about that Thanksgiving dinner that had started it all. Playing entrepreneur again, Vanessa had mocked, and everyone had laughed. No one was laughing now. Instead, they were finally seeing what I had known all along, that I was capable, worthy, and strong enough to create my own success, not by climbing over others like Martin, but by staying true to my vision and values. And that was the sweetest victory of all. Wow, what a journey we've been on together! I want to sincerely thank each and every one of you for sticking with me through this story. Have you ever experienced a moment when family underestimated you, only to be proven wrong later? I'd love to hear your own stories of vindication in the comments below. If this tale of family drama, betrayal, and ultimate justice resonated with you, please hit that like button to let me know. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing to my channel for more real-life stories that explore the complicated dynamics of family relationships and personal growth. Don't forget to share this video with someone who might need to hear that they're not alone in their struggle for recognition. Sometimes, the most valuable life lessons come from the people who should support us the most, but don't until we stand in our truth and show them what we're really made of. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video with another story that I hope will inspire, entertain, and maybe even heal some wounds along the way. Until then, remember that your worth isn't determined by your family's perception. It's defined by your courage to pursue your dreams despite the doubters.